Trump, the USA, and Islam worldwide. How faith stood strong amid politics. Bismillah, IRM. There are moments in history when politics shakes faith, when the voices of power echo louder than the whispers of prayer. Between 2016 and 2020, the world watched such a moment unfold as the United States of America entered the era of Donald Trump. His speeches stirred crowds, his words divided nations, and somewhere in the heart of that storm stood the Muslim community, patient, watchful, and faithful. From New York to Nigeria, from Damascus to Detroit, every Muslim heart asked the same question: how will this test our din? The so-called Muslim ban changed airport halls into scenes of tears and protests. Families were split by borders drawn in ink, yet bound by faith written in the hearts of believers. Cameras captured the cries, but Allah captured the sabr. And while some saw hostility, others saw an awakening. Mosques became gathering points, not just for prayer, but for courage. Neighbors of other faiths came forward, holding signs that read, "We stand with our Muslim brothers and sisters." Subnal, in times of trial, Allah opens doors unseen. The Qur'an reminds us, "Do not think it bad for you. Rather, it is good for you." Quran 2400 hours 11. What many thought would weaken Islam only made the believer stronger. It forced the Ummah to rediscover its voice, to speak of mercy, of justice, of unity. Scholars, activists, and ordinary Muslims rose to show the world that Islam is not fear. Islam is light. From the pulpits of Chicago to the minbars of Cairo, from classrooms to online platforms, a new energy was born, the energy of conviction. Muslims began saying, "If they speak about us, we will speak for ourselves, with knowledge, with patience, and with truth." This episode, Trump, the USA, and Islam worldwide. How faith stood strong amid politics, dives into those years of challenge and triumph. It is not about one man's politics. It is about the Ummah's endurance. And at the heart of this reflection stands your brother, Mallam JIJI, bringing you insight and perspective from wisdom from the Minbar. So, my dear listener, sit with an open heart. Reflect, question, and renew your niyah. For the story of Islam in the Trump era is not a story of defeat. It is a story of divine strength. Let's walk this path together, chapter by chapter, to witness how faith stood tall while politics trembled. The rise of a political storm. From Trump, the USA, and Islam worldwide. How faith stood strong amid politics. By Mallam JIJI, Wisdom from the Minbar. Bismillah, IRM. There are moments when history pauses, moments when the world seems to hold its breath, unsure of what will come next. The year was 2016, a year that would shake the foundation of global politics and, in many ways, the hearts of millions. In the United States, a businessman known more for his fame than his faith, Donald J. Trump, began a campaign that no one took seriously at first. But as the rallies grew and the chants grew louder, one thing became clear. This was not just a political movement. It was a cultural wave. With every slogan of "Make America Great Again," old fears and prejudices began to reawaken. Among those caught in its path were the Muslims, citizens, students, families, and refugees who had called America home for generations. The language of suspicion returned to the headlines. Words like terror, ban, and security became intertwined with Islam. The very faith that preached peace, tolerance, and mercy was once again painted as a threat. Many Muslims around the world asked, "Why now? Why Islam again?" But if we look deeper, Mallam JIJI reminds us this was not new. The Quran tells us, "They will never be pleased with you until you follow their way." Quran 2:120. From the earliest days of the Prophet, Muslims faced skepticism and hostility, yet they stood firm through knowledge, truth, and moral character. So too, in modern times, the Ummah was being reminded that every era has its test. The 2016 campaign used fear as a tool. Trump's speeches often highlighted incidents of extremism, but they blurred the line between criminals and the faith of over 1 billion peaceful believers. The word Muslim became, once again, a political tool. Yet, Allah tells us in the Qur'an, and they plan, but Allah plans, and Allah is the best of planners. Quran 8:30. What seemed like a political storm was, in truth, a spiritual reminder that Islam does not depend on approval from presidents or parliaments. It stands upon divine truth. As Trump's movement gained momentum, headlines around the world grew tense. From Nigeria to Indonesia, from Pakistan to the UK, Muslims followed closely, not because of curiosity, but because they understood something deeper. When America sneezes, the world catches a cold. Policies made in Washington ripple through every continent. Economic ties, media influence, diplomatic power, all connect the American story to the Muslim world. So when the possibility of a president who spoke harshly about Islam became real, the global Ummah began to brace itself. Some hoped it was just campaign talk. Others feared it was the beginning of a darker era. But amid all the uncertainty, something powerful began to happen within Muslim communities, an awakening of faith and awareness. Imams began speaking more boldly about Muslim identity. Masjids began teaching young Muslims how to stand confidently in their faith, how to represent Islam with calmness and conviction. Interfaith programs multiplied, and communities that were once quiet found their voice. For every hateful comment, there was a neighbor who said, "I know a Muslim, and they are not like that." For every policy that sought to divide, there were hearts that sought to unite. This, my brothers and sisters, is how Allah turns fear into strength. The Prophet once said, "Strange indeed is the affair of the believer, for everything that happens to him is good. If something good happens, he is grateful and it is good for him. And if something bad happens, he is patient and it is good for him." Sahih Muslim. During Trump's rise, the believers who understood this had no fear. They knew that no leader, no law, and no insult could ever remove the light of La ilaha illa Allah from the world. But let us be honest, many Muslims did feel anxiety. Students worried about visas. Refugees feared deportation. Mothers feared their children would face bullying at school. And those concerns were real, painful, and valid. Yet through that fear, faith was refined. Muslims started to rediscover what it truly means to rely on Allah. They learned that power is temporary. Presidents come and go. Nations rise and fall. But the call to prayer continues to echo across the earth, 5 times a day, reminding every believer that sovereignty belongs to Allah alone. In those early months of 2016 and 2017, while political commentators debated polls and predictions, Muslims were quietly preparing spiritually. They understood what was at stake, not just their safety, but their dignity. And that preparation led to a powerful transformation. Muslims began engaging with society more than ever before. They entered politics, media, education, and community service with renewed purpose, not to blend in, but to stand out with honor. Because when the world tries to define you, Islam teaches you to define yourself through your actions, your adab, your compassion. So, the rise of Donald Trump was more than a political moment. It was a divine reminder that the Ummah must never sleep, must never forget who they are, and must always anchor their identity in Todd, not in titles or passports. For every generation, Allah sends a wake-up call. For this generation, perhaps that call came through politics, reminding Muslims that Islam cannot be sidelined or silenced. So as the world watched the rise of Trump, the believers watched something else rise, the strength of their own Iman. The political storm was real, but so was the spiritual awakening that followed. And as we continue this journey, we will see how this storm tested, purified, and strengthened the Muslim world, transforming fear into faith and adversity into awakening. Stay with us, my dear brothers and sisters, as we move to Chapter 2, the Muslim ban and its ripple effect. This is Mallam JIJI, and you are listening to Wisdom from the Minbar. Wa Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. The Muslim ban and its ripple effect. Bismillah, IRM. There are moments when a single signature can change millions of lives. In early 2017, just days after taking the oath of office, President Donald Trump signed an executive order that shook the world, a policy soon known everywhere as the Muslim ban. The document carried the title, Protecting the Nation from Foreign Terrorist Entry into the United States. But to many Muslims, it carried another name, a ban on their identity. The order blocked entry from several Muslim-majority nations: Iran, Iraq, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, Syria, and Yemen. At airports across the world, confusion turned into chaos. People who had already boarded flights were turned back. Students with valid visas were told they could no longer enter. Refugees fleeing war found the gates of safety suddenly closed. The images spread across screens. Families in tears, lawyers sitting on airport floors holding signs that read, "We are here to help." Strangers comforting strangers. Protesters filling terminals with chants of "No ban, no wall." It was not just an American moment. It was a human one. Subnal, how quickly politics can pierce the hearts of the innocent. But for the believer, even in pain, there is purpose. The Qur'an tells us, "And we will surely test you with something of fear and hunger and a loss of wealth and lives and fruits, but give glad tidings to the patient." Quran 2:155. This was a test not only for those who were banned, but for the entire Ummah, to see how we respond when our dignity is challenged and our humanity questioned. Around the world, Muslims responded not with violence or hate, but with calm, prayer, and organization. Community centers became legal aid hubs. Youth volunteered to help travelers. Interfaith allies came forward. Churches opened their doors, and rabbis joined Muslims in prayer. The Prophet Muhammad once said, "The believers in their mutual compassion, mercy, and love are like one body. When one limb suffers, the whole body responds with sleeplessness and fever." Bukhari and Muslim. That hadith came to life during those days. From Jakarta to Johannesburg, from Lagos to London, Muslims watched in solidarity, feeling the pain of their brothers and sisters who were stranded between borders. The Ummah was united not by geography, but by faith and empathy. And yet, beneath the pain, there was a hidden strength emerging. For the first time in decades, Islam became the center of public discussion, not through the words of scholars alone, but through the lived experience of ordinary Muslims. Journalists began to ask, who are these people? Why are they being banned? Non-Muslims began to attend mosques just to understand the faith being targeted. Muslim students began giving talks, sharing Quranic verses about mercy, justice, and peace. And slowly, the narrative began to shift. Because every injustice exposes truth. Every wound reveals wisdom. Even the name Muslim ban became an opportunity because it forced the world to say the word Muslim again and again, and to think, to question, and to confront the lies told about Islam. The storm that was meant to silence Muslims only amplified their voice. For many American Muslims, it became a turning point. The quiet became activists, the fearful became educators, and the ordinary became leaders. They began organizing, voting, and running for office. They started campaigns for justice, awareness, and unity. Allah reminds us in the Quran, "Indeed, with hardship comes ease." Quran 94:6. The ban, in truth, did not ban Islam, it awakened it. The ripple effect spread beyond America. Muslim-majority nations debated how to respond. Some condemned it, others stayed silent, fearing political backlash. But among ordinary Muslims, something else happened, a growing sense of brotherhood that crossed borders. The ban reminded the Ummah that we are one, that pain in one corner of the world should move hearts everywhere. And for those who suffered directly, the refugees, the students, the families separated, many of them later testified that the hardship drew them closer to Allah. Some said, "We realize that no door can close unless Allah wills it." For the believer, every rejection in dunya can be a redirection to Jannah. What Trump's government intended as exclusion became, by Allah's design, an invitation for Muslims to rise, reconnect, and represent Islam more beautifully than ever before. Mallam JIJI often reminds us on wisdom from the Minbar. When the world closes its doors, Allah opens the door of the heart. And that is exactly what happened. Through tears at airports, through protests and prayers, through confusion and hope, the Ummah learned that faith is not tied to geography. Islam is not confined by borders or politics. The adhan still called out across the skies. The Qur'an was still recited in homes. Children still memorized Surah Al-Fatihah. Life went on, and faith went deeper. The so-called Muslim ban was meant to draw lines between nations. But what it truly drew was a stronger line of connection between Muslims worldwide and their creator. It was a reminder that Islam is global, unshakable, and eternal. And so, from this test, the Ummah emerged wiser, learning that unity is not found in comfort, but in crisis. As we move forward in this story, we will see that the ban was only the beginning of a wider challenge, one that reached into the hearts of Muslims everywhere, testing their identity, their patience, and their purpose. Join me, Mallam JIJI, in the next chapter, Islamophobia and the Test of Identity, as we explore how the image of Islam was shaped, tested, and ultimately reclaimed during those turbulent years. Wa assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Islamophobia and the Test of Identity. Bismillah IRM. In the wake of the Muslim ban, another challenge began to emerge, one that was less visible than border closures or executive orders, but far more personal: the test of identity. Islamophobia, prejudice, fear, and hatred toward Muslims surged in the United States and even reached the ears of Muslims around the world. From verbal harassment on the street to biased reporting in the media, the faithful began to feel the weight of suspicion simply because of their beliefs. Children at school were asked why they prayed 5 times a day. Students on campus were questioned about the teachings of their religion. Employees were overlooked for promotion because colleagues feared what they did not understand. Even the act of wearing a hijab, growing a beard, suddenly became a political statement rather than a personal expression of faith. And yet, Islam teaches us that our identity is rooted not in acceptance by others, but in obedience to Allah. The Qur'an reminds us, indeed, those who have believed and done righteous deeds, the most merciful will appoint for them affection. Qur'an 19 hours, 96 minutes. During this period, Muslims everywhere were being asked a silent question: who am I? Identity, in this moment, became a test, not of ideology, but of character. Some felt anger rising in their hearts. Others felt fear. But for those guided by sabr and knowledge, the test became an opportunity to reclaim Islam's true image in a world of misconceptions. Scholars, educators, and community leaders stepped forward. Imams delivered khutbahs that reminded congregants that adversity is part of the believer's journey. Parents taught their children that the strength of their faith is stronger than the fear of discrimination. And everyday Muslims became ambassadors of their faith simply by living it beautifully. Acts of kindness, charity, and honesty became silent rebuttals to the prejudice they faced. The world may have questioned their identity, but through action, Muslims affirmed it. The Prophet Muhammad said, "The best of people are those who are most beneficial to the people." Darakutni. And indeed, in this era of Islamophobia, Muslims embraced that guidance. They volunteered in their communities, helped neighbors regardless of faith, and invited curiosity with patience rather than confrontation. Meanwhile, media and social networks played a double-edged role. On one hand, misinformation spread quickly. On the other, Muslims seized the power of digital platforms to tell their own stories. Videos, blogs, interviews, and online lectures began to reach audiences that had never stepped into a mosque. Islam, through adversity, became visible in a new and positive light. For many, this was a spiritual awakening. The test of identity reminded Muslims that they are defined not by political narratives, but by divine guidance. It also reminded the world that Islam is not monolithic. It is diverse, compassionate, and resilient. Around the globe, the ripple effects were visible. In Europe, mosques organized interfaith dialogues. In Africa, youth groups hosted educational forums. In the Americas, Muslim organizations offered resources for refugees, immigrants, and students. A global conversation about Islam and identity began, rooted not in fear, but in truth. Mallam JIJI often reminds us, when the world misrepresents you, let your actions speak louder than their words. The test of identity also revealed the beauty of unity. Muslims from different backgrounds, ethnicities, and countries came together to defend the faith's dignity. It was no longer enough to focus only on local challenges. The Ummah became truly global, connected by shared struggle and shared faith. And amid the adversity, there were stories that inspired millions. Teachers stood up against discriminatory policies in schools. Students organized rallies for equality. Professionals educated their workplaces about Islam's true teachings. Each act, no matter how small, was a brick in the larger building of justice and awareness. The Qur'an reminds us, Allah does not burden a soul beyond that it can bear. Qur'an 2:286. Islamophobia, though painful, became a crucible for the believer's character. It was a reminder that identity is not something granted by society, but something anchored in Allah and expressed through righteous action. By the end of this period, Muslims had learned something crucial. Identity is a shield and a bridge. A shield to withstand prejudice and a bridge to connect hearts. It is not passive. It requires knowledge, patience, and moral courage. In facing Islamophobia, the Ummah learned to combine faith with strategy, prayer with action, patience with advocacy. Every insult became an opportunity to educate, every misconception a chance to clarify, and every challenge a step toward greater unity. As we continue this journey in Chapter 4, we will explore faith over fear, the Muslim response, showing how Muslims transformed adversity into activism, how communities became stronger, and how the Ummah rose above the storm of prejudice with wisdom, courage, and compassion. Stay with me, Mallam JIJI, as we continue to uncover these lessons of resilience, hope, and divine guidance. Wa assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Faith over fear, the Muslim response. Bismillah IRM. When a storm of politics and prejudice struck, the question for the Muslim Ummah was clear. What now? Fear could have silenced us. Anger could have divided us. But Islam teaches that faith must guide the response, not emotion alone. And so, the Muslim response was remarkable, not in grand gestures alone, but in countless small acts of courage, service, and education. Faith became the compass through uncertainty. Across the United States, mosques became more than places of prayer. They became centers of advocacy, education, and community service. Lawyers offered free legal aid to those affected by the Muslim ban. Volunteers assisted students and families navigating bureaucratic obstacles. Parents ensured their children understood Islam's teachings on patience, dignity, and justice. The Quran reminds us, O you who have believed, persevere and endure and remain stationed and fear Allah that you may be successful. Quran 3:200. Patience, perseverance, and righteousness became the pillars of the Muslim response. Fear did not define them. Faith did. Social media became a powerful tool. Ordinary Muslims shared their stories of hope, struggle, and compassion. Videos of interfaith dialogues, community service, and educational initiatives spread widely, challenging misconceptions about Islam. The Ummah began controlling its own narrative, replacing fear with knowledge and prejudice with truth. And it was not only activism, it was dawah through example. Acts of kindness, honesty, and service became the living proof of Islam's principles. Neighbors, colleagues, and classmates witnessed firsthand what it meant to live a life guided by faith rather than fear. The Prophet Muhammad said, "The believers, in their love, mercy, and compassion, are like one body. If one limb suffers, the whole body feels it. Bukhari and Muslim. This was reflected in the global Muslim response. Across continents, communities mobilized to support each other, sharing resources, hosting awareness campaigns, and providing education. In Europe, interfaith alliances grew stronger. In Africa, youth organized workshops on civic engagement and understanding Islam. In Asia, community centers focused on inclusivity and service. In all of this, one lesson emerged clearly. Faith transforms fear into action. It teaches that adversity is not a signal to retreat, but an invitation to rise. Muslims began running for local office, advocating for immigrant rights, and participating in civic engagement like never before. Faith guided them not toward anger, but toward justice and compassion. Communities became proactive instead of reactive. Even in private moments, Muslims leaned on spiritual practices, extra prayers, Qur'an recitation, and dhikr, reinforcing the connection to Allah and finding strength beyond worldly power. Mallam JIJI reminds us, when the world seeks to intimidate you, let your prayer be louder than their politics. And indeed, through this response, the Muslim community learned resilience. Fear no longer dominated conversations. Faith did. Identity was not defined by suspicion. It was expressed through action. Unity became a shield against division. Beyond America, the ripple effect was global. Muslims worldwide were inspired by these examples. Communities in Canada, the UK, and Nigeria shared strategies to remain resilient. Faith-based organizations collaborated internationally to advocate for human rights and social justice. This chapter in our history reminds us of a profound truth. Islam is not just a religion of personal devotion, but a system that equips its followers to face societal challenges with wisdom, patience, and courage. And as trials came, Muslims continued to embody the Quranic promise. And whoever relies upon Allah, then he is sufficient for him. Quran 65:3. By facing fear with faith, Muslims showed the world that identity, dignity, and conviction can coexist with compassion, service, and perseverance. This was a response that was peaceful yet powerful, quiet yet undeniable. Mallam JIJI often says, faith is not the absence of fear, but the mastery over it. As we conclude this chapter, we see a pattern emerging. Adversity becomes an opportunity, fear becomes a catalyst, and faith becomes the guide. The Muslim Ummah was not broken by politics. It was refined by it. In the next chapter, Global Politics and the Ummah's Awakening, we will examine how the challenges extended beyond borders, how decisions made in Washington affected communities from the Middle East to Africa, and how the Ummah collectively learned to navigate this new reality. Stay with me, Mallam JIJI, as we continue our journey through faith, resilience, and divine wisdom. Wa assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Global Politics and the Ummah's Awakening. Bismillah, IRM. While Muslims in the United States faced immediate challenges, the effects of the Trump era extended far beyond America's borders. Policies and statements made in Washington rippled across the globe, affecting nations, communities, and hearts. This was a test not only of patience, but of unity, awareness, and the global consciousness of the Ummah. One of the most visible moves was the recognition of Jerusalem as Israel's capital in 2017. For Muslims worldwide, Jerusalem is not just a city. It is a symbol of history, faith, and sacred trust. The announcement sparked protests, debates, and discussions in every corner of the Muslim world. From Gaza to Jakarta, Muslims asked themselves, how do we respond with dignity, faith, and strategy? At the same time, tensions with Iran increased, and sanctions created uncertainty that affected not only politics, but the livelihoods of ordinary people. Meanwhile, alliances with Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and other nations strengthened in ways that created both hope and concern within Muslim communities. Mallam JIJI reminds us, politics is temporary, but faith is eternal. The challenge was clear. The world was watching, and the Ummah needed to respond in ways that reflected unity rather than division. Muslims could not control every foreign policy decision, but they could control their own actions, their own voices, and their adherence to justice and compassion. Across the Middle East, scholars, activists, and ordinary citizens began to re-engage with Islam's principles of governance, justice, and social responsibility. Universities hosted debates, mosques held lectures, and youth organizations encouraged civic participation. The awakening was not just political, it was spiritual, intellectual, and communal. Even in Africa, Muslim communities began organizing for awareness and advocacy. They taught their children that the global Ummah is connected not by passports, but by shared faith and responsibility. Leaders reminded their people that global challenges require not despair, but thoughtful action guided by the Qur'an. The Qur'an teaches us, indeed, Allah commands you to render trust to whom they are due, and when you judge between people to judge with justice. Quran 4:58. Across the world, Muslims realized that their faith demanded more than passive observation. The Ummah needed to rise to the challenge, to educate, to advocate, and to act. And in many ways it did. From New York to Nairobi, from London to Kuala Lumpur, Muslims engaged in dialogues, humanitarian projects, and interfaith initiatives. The goal was not conflict, but clarity, not retaliation, but truth. Through these efforts, a global awareness emerged. The Ummah is not fragmented by politics. It is strengthened by faith, knowledge, and action. One of the most remarkable aspects of this awakening was the recognition that challenges in one part of the world affect all Muslims. A refugee denied entry in America is not just an American issue. It is a global issue of justice and human dignity. Mallam JIJI often emphasizes, when one part of the body suffers, the whole body responds. The Ummah is one body. This awakening also inspired young Muslims to think critically about leadership, governance, and advocacy. Political literacy became part of religious literacy. Muslims learned to navigate media narratives, discern truth from misinformation, and respond to challenges with both patience and knowledge. And amid all these political storms, faith remained the guiding light. Communities strengthened their spiritual practices, teaching Qur'an, Sunnah, and ethical principles, ensuring that no worldly challenge could shake the foundations of belief. The Qur'an reminds us, and whoever relies upon Allah, then he is sufficient for him. Quran 65:3. Through these years, the Ummah learned that reliance on Allah does not mean passivity. It means action guided by wisdom, prayer, and justice. It means addressing political realities while staying anchored in eternal truths. By the end of this chapter in history, Muslims worldwide emerged more conscious, more united, and more prepared to face future challenges. The Trump era may have created tension, but it also illuminated the resilience, wisdom, and strength of a global Ummah. And as we approach the final chapter, Lessons for the Ummah, Faith Above Politics, we will reflect on the enduring truths revealed through these years of challenge, and how Muslims everywhere can continue to live with purpose, unity, and steadfast faith. Stay with me, Mallam JIJI, as we draw together the lessons of resilience, patience, and awakening in the concluding chapter. Wa aslamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Lessons for the Ummah, Faith Above Politics. Bismillah IRM. As we reach the final chapter of this journey, we reflect on the deeper lessons that the Trump era has left for Muslims worldwide. The politics, policies, and controversies were temporary, but the guidance, resilience, and wisdom that emerge from these years are eternal. One of the clearest lessons is that faith must always be above politics. Leaders change, governments rise and fall, but Islam, its principles, ethics, and guidance, endures forever. The Quran reminds us, the dominion on that day belongs to Allah alone. He judges between people with truth. Quran 40:16. Every challenge Muslims faced, from travel bans to Islamophobic rhetoric, from foreign policy tensions to local prejudice, was a reminder that political power is fleeting. What lasts is our adherence to Allah, our character, and our commitment to justice and unity. Another lesson is the power of unity. Across continents, Muslims came together to support each other. Families separated by policies were comforted by community networks. Students and professionals stood in solidarity. Interfaith allies amplified Muslim voices. The Ummah learned that no individual struggle is isolated. We are one body, one heart, and one community bound by faith. Mallam JIJI often reminds us, when adversity comes, the Ummah must rise together, not divided by politics, but united by belief. The third lesson is the strength of action guided by faith. Prayer alone is powerful, but faith without action leaves potential unfulfilled. During these years, Muslims mobilized in extraordinary ways, volunteering, educating, advocating, and representing Islam with dignity. Every act, no matter how small, became a testament to resilience and conviction. And the fourth lesson is the importance of patience and wisdom. Not every insult, misunderstanding, or political challenge needs confrontation. The Qur'an teaches, and not equal are the good deed and the bad. Repel evil by that which is better, and thereupon the one whom between you and him is enmity will become as though he was a devoted friend. Quran 41:34. Muslims learn to face hostility with calm, to educate with clarity, and to respond with integrity. The Ummah realized that the best way to challenge injustice is with knowledge, patience, and compassion. Beyond these practical lessons, there is a spiritual awakening that occurred. Muslims reflected on their reliance on Allah, on the strength of sabr, patience, and on the need to prioritize eternal values over temporary worldly power. They rediscovered the beauty of Tawhid, that ultimate sovereignty belongs to Allah alone. And now, as we conclude this story, we return to the reminder that faith is never dependent on politics, nationality, or worldly authority. Islam thrives through the hearts of its believers, through the strength of the Ummah, and through actions rooted in truth and justice. For every Muslim who endured fear, confusion, or uncertainty during these years, know this: your patience has meaning. Your efforts have impact. Your faith has proven stronger than any policy or rhetoric. Mallam JIJI leaves you with this call to action. Strengthen your knowledge of Islam. Educate your community. Support those in need, regardless of borders. Represent Islam with dignity in every aspect of your life, at work, in school, and online. Pray, remain patient, and act with wisdom. Teach the next generation that faith is the true shield against any political or societal storm. The Trump era may now be part of history, but its lessons will guide the Ummah for generations. Let us remember, adversity can awaken strength, fear can inspire action, and faith, true, unshakable faith, transcends every challenge. As we end this documentary, Mallam JIJI from Wisdom from the Minbar thanks you for joining this journey of reflection, insight, and spiritual growth. Share this knowledge. Discuss it with your families. Act upon it in your communities. Let the message of faith above politics travel far and wide. May Allah grant the Ummah unity, wisdom, and steadfastness. May He strengthen our hearts, protect our communities, and guide us to act always with knowledge, patience, and righteousness. Wa aslamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah rabbil alamin. We have journeyed through a storm of politics, fear, and faith. We saw borders close, but hearts open. We saw policies wound, yet faith heal. We saw the Ummah bend, but never break. From Washington to Mecca, the Trump years reminded Muslims of a timeless truth. Power changes hands, but Allah's will never changes. The Quran declares, "Say, O Allah, owner of sovereignty, you give kingdom to whom you will, and you take kingdom away from whom you will." Quran 3:26. And so, when rulers rise and empires fall, the believer stands firm, guided not by the White House, but by the light of the house of Allah. This test revealed who we are as an Ummah, patient, resourceful, united by Tawhid. It taught us that even when the world turns its back, our sujud still touches the earth, and our hearts still rise to the heavens. The political winds may change, but the call of the mu'adhin still pierces the sky 5 times a day. Policies may shift, but the Qur'an remains unaltered. The same guidance yesterday, today, and forever. So what now, dear brothers and sisters? Now we build knowledge, build unity, build bridges with our neighbors. Let the lessons of those years remind us that faith is not fragile. It is forged in hardship. Let every masjid become a beacon of wisdom, every Muslim voice a message of peace. And remember, those who stood with sabr during trial are written among the victorious. To every listener, every seeker of truth, share this message. Let it travel beyond politics, beyond nations. Type your reflections in the comments, share your dua, and spread the reminder that faith conquers fear. This has been Mallam JIJI, your brother and voice from wisdom from the Minbar. May Allah grant the Ummah wisdom to navigate the storms ahead, patience to endure, and unity to rise again, stronger, wiser, purer. Wa assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.